In this third part of our lecture on membranes, we're going to focus on membrane transport. Recall that membranes were said to have selective permeability and that they're going to allow certain things to pass while prevent the passage of others. Some of this is fairly recent in its discovery. Transport proteins known as aquaporins were discovered when Peter Agre won the Nobel Prize in 2003. These aquaporins were discovered and helped explain how water could move quickly across plasma membranes in some cells. Now, we can break the transport into two categories as passive, which would require no expenditure of cellular energy like ATP, or active transport that requires cellular energy and therefore an expensive ATP molecules. Passive transport is often described by the concept of diffusion, and diffusion is the tendency of molecules of any substance to spread out evenly into the available space. Substances are going to move along a concentration gradient from an area of high concentration to low concentration. And these movements of these particles from areas of high concentration to low concentration across a semi-permeable membrane are purely random movements, right? And so if we look at this figure here that explains how diffusion works, we see these particles in high concentration and low concentration separated by a semi-permeable membrane. Thus, we have a concentration gradient that is set up. Each of the particles is moving by random movements, and some of the random movements take the particle from one side to the other, while other random movements prevent this. And so based upon the number of particles, we see a net movement from high concentration to low concentration. Now, if the system is allowed to continue, the net movement will cease when the equilibrium is reached and there is no longer a concentration gradient. However, it does not cause the movement of particles to stop. One particle moves this way by a random movement and an equal number of particles move the opposite direction. Now, you might recall in lab, we talked about diffusion and we talked about 4 factors that can influence the rate of diffusion. These 4 factors were the size of the particle. Obviously, a large particle is harder to move than a smaller one. The overall steepness of the concentration gradient could increase the rate of diffusion. The density of the medium that they're moving through, or how big are the openings or perforations in our semi-permeable membrane. And finally, the 4th was the temperature. High temperatures tend to introduce more energy into the system and therefore make these particles diffuse faster. We can also look at the diffusion of water. The diffusion of water is called osmosis. So the solute abundance in solutions affects the movement of water as it can move as a particle. And we call this concept tonicity. Tonicity is the ability of a solution to cause a cell to gain or lose water. Now, this concept is fairly easy, but we're going to use some terms to describe the solute concentrations. So if a solution is going to contain less solute than another solution, we say that that solution is hypotonic. So hypo, the prefix, the word root hypo means under, and tonic refers to the solutes. So hypotonic, less solute. Hypertonic, hyper meaning above, or more solute. Now, if a solution has less solute, then it has more water. If a solution is hypertonic, then it has less water because it has more solute. Now, when we're talking about the movement of water by osmosis, water is always going to move from a hypotonic solution to a hypertonic solution. We see the net movement of water from a hypotonic to a hypertonic solution. And again, this will continue until the solute concentrations are equal, in which case the system is at equilibrium, and we say that the solutions are isotonic. Iso meaning equal. So we can look at this graphically, or using this figure where we see a concentration gradient set up here with a higher concentration of solute particles on this side of our semi-permeable membrane as compared to this side. So we see a net movement of water particles into this space, and therefore it raises the volume. In lab, we did not look at increases in volume, so to speak. We used mass of the cell to determine whether or not water was moving into or out of the cell. So this is a difficult concept. Be sure that you spend some time reviewing these terms and can answer some simple questions related to whether or not water would move into or out of a cell based upon these concentrations. Now, what is the effect of this on living cells? Well, when we look at the effects of tonicity on plant and animal cells, we see that it affects them differently, and this has to do with some fundamental differences in the way plant and animal cells are put together, specifically plant cells being surrounded by that rigid cellulose cell wall. Animal cells, such as these red blood cells, really prefer to be in an isotonic environment. When the cell and its environment are isotonic to one another, the animal cell shape is easily maintained. If we put the animal cells in a hypertonic environment, then we're going to see the water move out of the cell into the extracellular or the spaces outside of the cell, and this causes the cells to shrivel or plasmolyze, right? And it can be detrimental to their survival. If we put an animal cell in a hypotonic solution, then we see water move from the solution into the animal cell. And because there's no rigid cell wall there, the animal cells could burst, and we call this cell lysis. So again, animal cells tend to prefer an isotonic environment. Plant cells, however, fare best in a hypotonic environment. And the reason for this is the central vacuole of plant cells is filled not only with water but electrolytes. So hopefully it creates this concentration gradient where the external environment is hypotonic and water is constantly being pushed in here by osmotic pressure, which creates turgor pressure. And so we say that the cell is turgid. If you think about the cells in lab, they swelled up and they became turgid. This pushes the cytoplasm against the cell wall, and it actually helps to maintain the shape of the plant cell. Whereas a plant cell in an isotonic environment is somewhat flaccid, the turgor pressure is lower, and again, if we put a plant cell in a hypertonic environment, the cell can plasmolyze, and actually the cytoplasm of the cell can shrink away from the cell wall. What about things, single-celled organisms that live in water, such as this paramecium? Well, as water moves in from the hypotonic to hypertonic environment inside of their cytoplasm, they don't have a cell wall to prevent them from bursting. So they use a specialized vacuole shaped like a star that you can see right here called the contractile vacuole. And the contractile vacuole collects this water, and as its name implies, when it fills up, it contracts and it forces this water out, sort of like a little miniature pump to help maintain the osmotic balance of the cell.